Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be back. I think I hear Her Worship coming online. Morena Mayor Tapsell. Just the usual reminders, everyone. This meeting is being live streamed. Just a reminder to turn off your mobile phone, and we hope to take the break at about 11 if we haven't finished before then. Get our meeting underway today. Councillor Lee, would you like to open our meeting with the karakia, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Almighty God, we give thanks for the blessings which have been bestowed on us. Laying aside all personal interests, we acknowledge the King and pray for guidance in our deliberations, that we may conduct the affairs of this committee with wisdom, justice, mercy and humility, for the welfare and peace of Rotorua. Amen.
Kia ora, Councillor Lee, thank you for that. Call for apologies. I do have an apology from Councillor O'Brien for early departure. Are there any other apologies? No other apologies. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the apologies, please? Move Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Kiriopa. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. Are there any declarations of interest? No, there don't appear to be any. Thank you. Any urgent items not on the agenda? No, thank you. Right, that's easy. Let's moving on to page 5 of the agenda, which is the confirmation of the minutes held on the 13th of March. I have a mover and a seconder that the minutes are confirmed as a true and correct record. Thank you, Councillor Waru. Seconded by Councillor Kiriopa. Thank you. Are there any amendments to the minutes? If not, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. Thank you. Moving on now to our first presentation, I'd like to welcome Councillor Downard from the Waikato Regional Council, Phil King, the Director of the Regional Transport Connections, to speak to the presentation which is on the Waikato Regional Council 2024 to 34 long-term plan. Welcome. You've got a presentation. I think we've allowed 20 minutes for the presentation, and then we'll take questions from the councillors. The presentation, I think, has been tapered towards the area of our district that falls within the Waikato Regional Council area. Just for the council's information, I think it's 5% of our ratepayers, total ratepayers, that fall within the Waikato as opposed to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council area, but I think you've got that covered off on one of your slides. So over to you, Phil, and Councillor Downard.
Apologies of our chair, Pamela Story. She couldn't make it today. Thank you.
Morena koutou, ko Pirivi King toka wingwa. Good morning, everybody. My name's Phil King. I'm the Director of Regional Transport Connections for the Waikato Regional Council. And myself and Councillor Downard will take you through a few slides and then be happy to answer any questions that you might have. If I probably press this the wrong way. So it's a great opportunity for us to come and talk to you about our long-term plan, and thank you for providing us some time on your busy agenda today. The Waikato region covers spatially a chunk of your district, and the Kaimai-Mamaku range being the boundary between the Bay of Plenty and the Waikato regions. For us as an organisation, our vision is for a mighty Waikato caring for our place and empowering our people. Our 6 strategic priorities are shown on the page there, and they have formed the basis of the development of our long-term plan, which has come together over the last several months. Like you, and like the rest of New Zealand, we have faced some big challenges over the last years, including COVID, the recent weather events and ongoing inflation. The decisions have been made to focus our long-term plan on the resilience of our rohe as our primary objective of all of the work that we've done in producing this document. And that includes social and economic well-being as well as infrastructure. And the development of a spatial plan for the Waikato region is underway. The consultation on our plan opened last week and closes on the 2nd of May, and we'd very much welcome a submission from your organisation as you are able. We'll take you through a little snapshot of the plan now and maybe answer some questions which we can record as part of the engagement process with yourselves. In terms of our total numbers, our rates rises are proposed to be 6% in year 1, 8% in year 2, and about 3% in year 3, with a tailing off after that. That's obviously averages across all ratepayers and doesn't reflect necessarily the amount that each ratepayer would pay. Part of the reason for that steep dip beyond the end of year 3, year 4 is related to our targeted rates numbers, which primarily relate to the way that government is funding transport and providing us only with 3 years of funding certainty. So the pink lines there show our targeted rates for public transport reducing very significantly in year 4, and that's due to the lack of funding certainty beyond that point. So the rates take at that point, it looks like a negative when in reality there'll be a program there to build up that fund as we move forward. Over the term of the plan, our total rates revenue is set to increase from 130.3 million in 23-24 to 178 million in 33-34. So those are our total numbers. For the portion of Rotorua District that is in our region, the proposed increase as a median is $15.84 across all households, but there's a very clear split between urban or smaller lots and then a more significant increase for much larger agricultural or commercial lots. And that's about 880 on one side and about 470 on the other. So there's a 1/3, 2/3 split between a very small increase and potentially a much larger increase. The long-term plan for us is focused around 4 core themes, and I'll go through each of those quickly, and perhaps at the end of each one we could answer quick questions, or I could proceed through all 4 and then take questions across the whole lot. Would be your choice, Madam Chair. You're happy for me to go through all 4 and then... Okay.
Sorry, yes, if you want to just quickly cover that off in your presentation.
Right, thank you. So the first key theme is around the region's biodiversity, and we have a targeted rate for that that has been in place for some time, and there is a need to review the amount of money that's put into that program. The current cost per property is $5.80, and our program proposes to increase that up to either $8.68, which is our preferred option, or if there is significant interest beyond that point, to increase to $15 per property. And that is to enable us to respond to ongoing challenges within biodiversity, biosecurity. Wallabies is a good example, where we're working closely with the Bay of Plenty region already in a joint program across the range. Golden clam and other waterborne species is another part of that. Our second theme is around changing the way that we fund public transport. It's effectively not an issue in the Rotorua district because we don't deliver any public transport services currently, but at a wider scale, we are different from the Bay of Plenty in that up until recently most of the rates for public transport has come from the general rate from district councils, and we've invoiced them annually for the cost of their services in their district. Our proposal effectively looks to move that model to something similar to what you see in the Bay of Plenty side, where ratepayers are rated directly by the regional council for those services. There is a slight difference, which is that for us the options are, instead of it I believe with the Bay of Plenty, all ratepayers in urban areas are rated for that public transport service. For us, we're looking to allocate those costs to people who get either fully direct or more direct benefits from that public transport service. So option one is that 80% of that funding comes from properties within 5 kilometres of a bus route, with 20% from all other properties in the district. Or option two is for 80% to come from all properties within 800 metres of a bus stop, and then 20% within that 5 kilometre zone. So there's a slight difference there in the way that we're proposing to take that forward. And district by district, we're seeking interest from each council, and we already rate for Hamilton, Thames, Coromandel, Hauraki and Matamata Piako, and we would add each district to that if they wish to come on board with that platform. The next proposal is to discontinue the Regional Development Fund, and we've had a fund in place following its creation in the 2015-25 long-term plan. Since being set up, 3 grants totalling $3 million have been approved, but the fund has been undersubscribed, and the discussion about the continuation of our contribution of the fund has been a topic that's been discussed at length through the long-term plan process. So our proposal, our recommended approach is to discontinue the Regional Development Fund. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next option, or to continue with the Regional Development Fund. Connected in some way to that is a discussion about the Regional Economic Development Agency, TAWAKA, which was created in 2018 by the Waikato Mayoral Forum. And the Regional Council has funded $750,000 a year annually to that organisation. And there has been, in the vein of the Regional Development Fund, to some extent, a conversation about the role of the Regional Council in continuing to fund that. The proposal is to continue our current funding for 3 years, potentially using those unallocated regional development funds as the funding source. Which leads to the next question about if we decide to continue the Regional Development Fund, then how is that funded? And effectively, it would be transferred to a rates cost of about 35 cents per $100,000 capital value. So we'd be interested in your thoughts on that and the interactions that you may have had with TAWAKA for the portion of the district that's in the Waikato region. The final topic for us is looking at changes to the funding of primary industry compliance. And we are currently monitoring compliance on all properties over 2 hectares. And their funding is on that basis. And our proposal is to increase that monitoring to a larger 20-hectare level, which is consistent with the farm plan regulations. And that would see some of those costs transfer from smaller to larger lots, effectively. Just quickly, there is a wider work program that we are prioritising in the long-term plan, and some of those projects are on the screen there, just to provide you with a sense of some of the projects that continue under the wider funding in our plan. Well, I don't necessarily plan to go through each of them individually, but happy to take questions. There are 2 projects that we're proposing to cease as part of our long-term plan, and the first is the Eco Retrofit program, which was set up within our current long-term plan, but then superseded by changes to the Credit Contracts and Consumer Financing Act that came in at the end of 2021, and that meant that we were unable to practically deliver that scheme, so we propose that it's withdrawn. The second is the On the House program, which particularly in the South Waikato district area, but across other communities, we have supported the installation of insulation and heat pumps and cleaner wood burning technologies. That has been a very successful fund, and there's been a significant program delivered using that money, but we have seen a demand for that reducing significantly recently as properties in the main have been improved, and our proposal is to stop the funding for that program at this point. Just quickly take you through the infrastructure strategy.
Phil, I just wondered if you can pull the microphone a little bit quieter. I think you're getting a little bit quieter.
My apologies. So, like yourselves, we have to develop an infrastructure strategy. We've chosen to develop one over 50 years, as opposed to the minimum requirement of 30 years. And we are now looking out at the renewal and the replacement of a lot of our stock bank infrastructure over that longer time period. At the same time, we're very aware of climate change and the impact of water levels being different, and the technologies and the systems that we've had in place previously may not be the most suitable approach for us going forward. So we're foreseeing a change over time to that program and increased costs. Equally, we need our infrastructure strategy to better align with our wider community wellbeing and a whole range of other programs to make sure that the investments we make deliver multiple outcomes. Over time, that will increase our debt because this is capital funded, debt funded, and currently we don't have a large debt as an organisation, but that will grow as this infrastructure strategy rolls out over time. The majority of that work is in the lower Waikato area as opposed to the upper Waikato area. Yes, and finally, we'd welcome your submission on any of those topics or anything else that's in our plan by our closing date of the 2nd of May. Happy to open up for any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you very much, Phil. Councillor Dana, did you have any comments that you wish to add to the presentation?
Yeah, just like any long-term plan, it's a real struggle to try and advocate for the ratepayers for certain things, and then also to cut certain things that you believe aren't the core business of your council. For me, probably the two things that I think does affect the upper Waikato or part of your region and our region is that the biosecurity, and also probably in the long-term plan, the extra 100,000 that we're advocating for the community transport, especially for rural areas that struggle to access public transport. It's a real big thing. I think we've just allocated 209,000 and we're asking for an extra 100,000 to put into that community transport. So I think that is very important for the rural areas. And then also the biosecurity. Obviously you've heard about the golden clams, and now it's been found in the Taupo Aqua Park, and apparently it's been in there for 2 to 3 years. So it's a completely separate water entity to the river or the lake. So whether it was transferred in there by humans. So I think, you know, MPI, our partners, MPI or DOC, I feel as though they have dropped the ball a little bit when the golden clam came in. So it was a big push from all councillors in the long-term plan that we needed to up our game in the biodiversity and biosecurity. And also, you know, we partner with Bay of Plenty with the Wallaby, as Phil said. So those are probably the two big things that I've advocated for. I won't say what I didn't advocate for. I'm not a fan of the economic fund Te Waka, but as a majority they've agreed to carry on funding that. I think TAs have their own economic development programs that they spend a lot of the ratepayers' money on developing. So that's probably my 2 cents, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Downer. Councillors' questions. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation, guys. Just had a question on the biodiversity part of the presentation. With a number of our rural properties south of Rotorua already having SNAs, are they also expected to contribute towards the biodiversity plan as well?
Well, the Heritage Fund is over all ratepayers, so that's where the increase is going from $5 something to the $8, or if there's a big, through the consultation, it comes back to 15. So that's probably the biggest part of where the extra money's coming from. So it does affect all ratepayers.
Thank you.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. Thanks, gentlemen, for your presentation. Thanks for coming out our way to do this for us. I've got an interest in understanding better the transportation. You say that there's going to be some transportation made provision for in the rural areas. Does that apply to the Rotorua district and, you know, the southern end of this particular district's catchment?
Yeah, so community transport entities, whether it's St John's or any other entity that's in the rural areas, can apply to that fund. And that's what we're saying in the long-term plan, where we want that an extra 100,000 going into that, because we do see that there is a struggle by a lot of ratepayers to fund public transport when it's hard for them to access it, and you know, times and the ability to get to certain areas, where community transport have really got their finger on the pulse and helping out to get these people to hospitals or to school and stuff like that.
Oh, understood. So it's slightly different to public transport like buses. And so the 20%, the option one that you've proposed says that potentially, and that's the preferred option, 20% of the funding required comes from everybody, but that's public transport.
Yep.
So that would be ratepayers that are not actually getting the benefit of public transport that will be paying some of that cost as well. Is that how I understand that?
Well, our view would be that everybody gets benefits from public transport, but that 20% being applied to all of the ratepayers in that district area is about apportioning the benefits to the 80% and that 20%. So yes, that's the model, is that all ratepayers in that district would pay that proportion of that total cost. But it's just to add to that, it's every district has a different level of public transport, and our allocation of those costs would be targeted at each district based on the actual costs in that area. So if there are no costs here now, there would continue to be no costs until a public transport service is introduced.
Oh, thank you.
The community transport that Councillor Downard is referring to is funded from our general rate.
Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. One more question, thank you. Regarding the changes to funding of primary industry compliance in the farm plans, the government has signalled a change to the way that they tend to approach the farm plans, and they've indicated that they also will be taking a different approach to the way that they'll be audited. Was any consideration given to those factors when you considered imposing extra costs onto those landowners?
Yeah, I think there was consideration on everything, but I think all the councillors believe that biosecurity and biodiversity has been left behind for the last 6 to 9 years. So unfortunately, in the rating system that we've got, there's quite a few targeted, and the farmers have been unduly probably targeted a lot in a lot of areas. So it's finding that balance, and that's where we thought, by lifting the heritage funds, which is all ratepayers, that it kind of helps in that biosecurity.
I guess just to clarify, my interest was probably more around the farm environment plans and the 0.3% increase, which is probably specifically more for those freshwater kind of spaces, and as well as the biodiversity. But yeah, thank you. And the last one, thank you, Madam Chair, was around the infrastructure strategy and flood management, because that is, a continuing, ongoing issue, particularly in the southern end of our catchment. And you talk about improved monitoring. I'm just wondering if there's any plans to address or change the way that the Waikato River is monitored, particularly the changes in levels that occur, around the hydro dams and that sort of thing, because that impacts when we have flood situations as well. Is there any plans to look at the monitoring around that upper catchment, and particularly in the Rotorua low-lying, or even, the southern end of our district?
The short answer is yes. As I mentioned, the current programme is fairly limited, but we acknowledge the ongoing flood issues and a desire to remove obstructions from the watercourse, such as overgrown vegetation. We are participating in a Section 128 review, I believe, perhaps with yourselves and with Mercury on that topic at the moment. So that's live work that's underway.
Oh, great. Thank you very much for your answer. I appreciate it.
And there's also a work program that the regional councils put out for the upper Waikato River, so they are addressing willows, taking down willows and planting along especially River Road, that community there, because they've had quite a bit of problems with erosion around there, so they have started a work program on a lot of the areas.
Thank you. That's great to hear, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Your Worship, the Mayor.
Good morning, everyone. Apologies, I'm joining by Zoom. Thank you for your presentation this morning, and thank you also for covering golden clams. That was going to be one of my questions. I'm pleased it's also a focus of yours. I do have a question regarding regional development. So, as you know, both of us have a requirement to invest in infrastructure, but we also have a requirement to take into consideration climate change, which means that we will have additional stormwater and flood mitigation projects required in our region of the Waikato. Is there a possibility, I know that you'll remove in the Regional Development Fund, but is there a possibility through whatever the new funding is to be able to partner in some of these significant infrastructure projects? I think we have seen very successfully when either central government, councils or other organisations, we partner together to deliver some of these significant projects, we get a much better outcome. So just wondering if there's opportunities for partnership.
I would say absolutely, and we'd be very happy to continue that conversation with yourselves.
Yeah, I think especially in the environment where the pines, there's been partnerships with iwi and other entities of governments and stuff like that to get rid of the wildling pines in the upper Waikato region. So yeah, we'd be very welcome into talking and proceeding to get stuff done with partnerships.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions, Your Worship? No? Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe te chairmana, o tira tēnā kōrua. Nau mai hoki mai, Councillor, and thank you for I tō kōrero. Just a quick question. What part, a couple of questions, what part did Tainui play in putting this proposal together, if any?
Well, we're going out to consultation, so, you know, whether they have a part in the play in the consultation, but not really hugely involved in the of the long-term plan, as far as I know.
I was just curious to know that, but you mentioned there's already been a quarter around the clams, and I think the mayor's already asked my question around that, around how we can work together better to, you know, for their biodiversity stuff as well. Very important. But my last question was just around the regional fund, development fund, I think it was, one of those funds anyway that was on your presentation. It said it was cut, there wasn't much of an uptake. So I think it was 3 things in 8 years. Was there any sort of work done around why there was such a poor uptake on that fund? So I reckon that, you know, it's a lot of money not to be sort of accessed.
We did have feedback that there was a lack of knowledge of the fund, and there was some feedback that the process of accessing it was relatively hard. But I believe staff have spent some time working through both of those issues, and we still haven't seen a significant uptake in the funds that were available. So effectively 50% of the funds that were allocated were, 50% of the funds that were accumulated were allocated, with the remaining 50% sitting there within the fund still. So it sort of shows you the level of spend that there has been over that time period.
But that was out of the three? Was that only three projects? Equates to half of that fund?
In effect, yes. And I did, one of them was Waikato Film, another, there were three, and I don't have the details of each.
One was the harbour up in Thames. I'm not sure what the other one was.
Yeah.
Okay, no, thank you. I just was curious around that because it's a rather large fund, and since 2015, since its establishment and not being used.
It was a rather large fund, and it was funded by our investment, the interest off the investment, and of course, you know, what's happened over the last 6 years since 2019, that diminished quite a lot. So that was one of the factors also why it was recommended by a lot of the councillors that we disestablish it.
Kapai, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell, followed by Councillor Wang.
Thank you guys for your presentation. My question is around, I saw a paragraph there that in the transport section, and it said, simply replacing or repairing is no longer a to-do, or for me is, well, what are you going to do instead? Because I thought those are bread and butter issues, repairing and replacing roads.
We don't have responsibility for those. We're not responsible for the road network.
Or even advocating.
Yes.
With.
So we similar to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, we have to produce a regional land transport plan every 3 years, and that plan advocates strongly for 5 key areas of focus for us around resilience, response to climate change, economic development, safety, and then maintenance. So we have identified that as one of our core areas within the Waikato Regional Land Transport Plan. And we have a similar role to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council in that space, in terms of coordinating and prioritising a regional programme of work for the road network and across all transport. Councillor Downer is the chair of the Regional Transport Committee. I don't know if you want to say any more on that.
Yeah, so we've advocated through our regional transport long-term plan, and especially the GBS came out late, as you're probably aware, and we put a submission into that. They have got a huge program on for resilience and potholes and maintenance. As you're probably aware, the roadworks that is going on a lot of the major roads around the place, the new roundabout on State Highway 29 and State Highway 1. So their work program is pretty full on at the moment. So we definitely, as an entity, we advocate for all those things on making our roads safer and you know, maintain. A lot of work's gone on up at the Coromandel, as you're aware, with the new bridge, and also resilience on other roads that were hammered because that road was closed. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wang, final question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morena Korua, thank you for your presentation. Just around, I know one of the points you had in your presentation around Te Huia, I know that it's a really valuable service connecting Auckland and I guess the wider Waikato. Is there any advocacy or any work that you're doing in terms of potentially extending that service? I guess advocacy with the government in terms of extending that service, because I think it's a very valuable service, has a lot of potential for the Bay of Plenty as well, further down the track to be included in that service.
That's a very good question, and there's a wide range of things we could answer that with, but probably the core one is that the service is now just over 2 years in, and it has settled in. It is a well-used service. It's achieving its patronage targets and its customer satisfaction targets. It's been impacted slightly by the performance of the Auckland Metro network due to all of the capital work that's going on up there, but overall it's on track at this point to achieve the benefits and the aspirations that were in place when it was funded. We're going through a process with Waka Kotahi at present to complete a 2-year review, which is a requirement ahead of confirmation of funding to the 5-year term of the original trial, and that's rolling out over the next couple of months. Our long-term plan includes money from year 4, which is after the end of the 5-year trial, for service enhancements to continue at that point. So we have just in early February added some more trips on a Thursday and a Friday and a Saturday, and they have been successfully received and are being well used by new customers. And at that year 4 point of our long-term plan, we'd look to add more services once we have funding certainty. The other issue, which was also noted on that slide, is that the rolling stock that is in use was made in the 1970s and was refurbished for Tahuia. We need a plan for the renewal of that rolling stock at some point in the future, and we are undertaking work with Greater Wellington to see whether there's value in us joining their Lower North Island rolling stock order. And that would, if that is successful and we do still have a service and everything's in place, that would see new rolling stock around 2030 or so, which would further enhance the service and would allow emissions-free trips all the way into central Auckland using battery and electric technology.
Thank you. Can I just thank Phil and Councillor Downard for taking the time to come in and give us this presentation today on your long-term plan. I'm sure that there are plenty of constituents in the southern part of our city that would be wanting to make submissions on this, and we'll certainly encourage that, but thank you very much this morning for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. We'll carry on with the agenda. So it's page 53 of the agenda. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the statements of intent for the council-controlled organisations for the year commencing 1 July 24 for Rotorua NZ and the Rotorua Regional Airport be received. Moved Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Kiriopa. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, thank you, that is carried. Welcome, JP. You're going to overview the report.
Morning everyone, and welcome back, Madam Chair. Nice to have you back. Just as a report, this is obviously a procedural one here. We issued the letters of expectation to our 2 CCOs, and we're receiving back from them now their draft SOEs, or SOIs. Councillors, this is really just your opportunity to see those and to identify any comments you would like to pass back to them for consideration by those SOIs or those boards before they issue us with a final SOI for the coming financial year. Obviously there's some issues that come together in this particular year, which is the process around the long-term plan. So I would expect that both of those CCOs would be holding back on finalising their SOIs as much as possible to make sure it aligns with the decision-making processes you will be undertaking as part of the LTP. So happy to answer any questions or to take back any comments from you to those 2 CCOs.
Thank you, JP. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification. So if we ask questions about issues that may or may not be part of these reports, will you actually be able to answer them?
No.
Yeah.
The intent here is something that we're receiving, as I say, administratively, their statement of intent. If you'd like to ask the chief executives or their board chairs, I think their next reporting time is next month. So you may have to focus your questions to them directly at that point.
I think just for clarification, what this opportunity is for us to provide feedback on the delivery of the items that the CCOs have put in these draft statements of intent. So are we happy with the work that they're going to deliver? Are we happy with the key performance measures? Are there other things that they should be concentrating on, or is there any other feedback that we want to give to the boards for the work that they'll be undertaking for the next year? So I think that some of the things that have been clarified in this report, from my perspective, have been around the use of the service level funding that we're providing to the airport and how that may be used. You'll see that obviously there may need to be some amendments to Rotorua NZ later on, depending on what happens with the LTP. My feedback, I think I had provided to JP prior to this, is that given that councillors are required to have their meeting attendance recorded, I think it would also be good from a public perspective that we know that board members are also attending, and so that would be part of the measures to show that we're getting the support and strategic advice from the board members. So that would be good to see that shown there. But the Community and District Development co-chairs and myself have worked with JP on this, so I'm happy to take any further feedback or questions around the deliverables for the CCO. So does that sort of clarify where? Yes,
I can still refer to what I was going to ask then.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll take your question then, Councillor Patterson.
So on page 26, the reputation rebuild, it states, creating positive change through community engagement and positive local media, acknowledging that pride starts from within. And then further down it states, further strengthening Rotorua's reputation and building brand equity. We will focus on building our reputation as a vibrant world-class destination in a way that is authentic and meaningful to both visitors and the local community. My concern with this is that we're putting the cart before the horse. We still haven't fixed the issues that are plaguing our city, and here we are going to be shouting from the rooftop saying we've fixed it when we haven't. I've been accosted twice in the last week by concerned ratepayers going, I've had visitors come to stay with me who have been approached on the street by beggars asking for money in an intimidating way. Now, these people are going to go back to Auckland and tell their friends about what's happening in their personal experiences. Now, if I've had 2 people raise this with me, there must be a hell of a lot more than just that, because I'm just one person. So my concern is, are we putting the cart before the horse? If we're going to spend a heck of a lot of money trying to tell people that this is the safety issues in Rotorua have been addressed, that we have found the solutions, that we are making a way forward, when in fact they haven't, to me it would be like trying to convince the rest of us that the world is flat. You know, it's just, I'm concerned.
Councillor Pearson, I'm not sure if JP is able to answer that, because it really wasn't a question, but I think that we are addressing some of these issues, and we are looking, you know, that's a small percentage of the negative things that we're hearing, but there's a lot of good stuff that's happening in our community, and that community pride comes from within. So part of our reputation rebuild, and this is part of the work that we've asked Rotorua NZ to do, is that we ourselves need to be promoting Rotorua for all the good things that are happening here that we know happens and goes on. Yes, there may be some small things that with beggars, and you've heard in our community safety reports the work that we're doing to try and stop that in our community safety hub, the work that the police are doing on intersections. This work is already ongoing, so I think that we can't not do this piece of work. I think that we've had communicated through Rotorua NZ a strategic plan about how they propose to deliver this reputation rebuild, and part of it includes us being positive about our place as a wonderful place to work, live and play. And I'm not sure what the question is around the feedback that we would be giving on Rotorua NZ. If you're saying that we should halt this, I'm not sure that there would be universal agreement around that, but happy to take some questions from councillors if there are other views on that.
Madam Chair, maybe I could just add to that. Obviously, no one wants any visitor to have a bad experience. I think one of the questions that you can elicit probably when the CCO reports next month is the overall picture of the success of the summer period and some of our long weekends, which have been extremely popular. We have seen a significant return, particularly of international visitors, and the vast majority have, and the feedback has been extremely positive about us as a destination and those who have experienced us over those sort of holiday periods. So I think the point that you've made is well founded on we need to keep an eye on the potential risks that do have an impact on us reputationally, but equally we also need to keep an eye on the fact that we have actually had a very successful summer and a great return of international visitors and domestic visitors across some of these extended weekends. So I think it is a case of not taking an eye off our issues, which potentially are more focused within the council organisation as opposed to what's within the control of our CCO, whose role it is to make sure they're working successfully with those tourism businesses that are seeking to enhance their product, make it a good stay for people who do come here, and obviously also to market and promote us. So there is a bit of a role crossover here. So certainly I think that's in our wheelhouse, that we need to keep our focus on the safety initiatives and our partnerships with police.
Thank you. I do actually have a question. So just with regards to the figures stated on page 31, 7.1 key performance measures, the percentage of commercial accommodation occupied says 57%. Does that figure include emergency motels?
No, it does not. Great.
And then the bottom 4 rows of percentages are quite favourable, which doesn't seem to reflect in the top row. So it says domestic visitor card expenditure, 23-24, the target was 315 million, whereas the actual by January was 195 million, which is 119.4 million behind. So is that likely to be achieved by the end of June to meet that KPI? That's what I mean by the conflict of the figures. It says we had a pretty successful accommodation, but the people just aren't spending.
Again, I think the key here is you're drilling into the measures that sit within the plan. I think the key here is to look at the measures. The actual performance is something that you need to traverse with the CCO when they report next month. I would make a comment here that we're seeing still a lagging behind of domestic visitation from our previous highs, but it's actually the spend levels are higher in the district and being supported significantly by the international visitation. So again, I think the key bit here is to ask the CCO. They'll be watching this, no doubt, as a follow-up to this meeting, and we'll be prepared probably to answer that question for you next month.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wari.
Tēnā koe te chairman. I'm just seeking clarification, rather. So this has been put forward. We've got 2 SOIs being put forward for 2 different CCOs, and they're asking for our feedback to the draft. I thought that's what we were going to do, and accept that, yes, we will be providing feedback over a period of time till the next thing, not to have a big hui right now about it, because we've just only had it a few days. So I'm just seeking clarification as to...
Yeah, so we are seeking feedback on the drafts. Obviously there may be some questions that come out of that JP can answer to clarify what the input might be to that. But I'm happy to take any more feedback on the drafts that have been provided. I think, Councillor Lee, you had your hand up?
Sorry then, Madam Chair, so we will have an opportunity to provide feedback after this hui.
I think we would like to provide that feedback through this session, so we know that the feedback that we're providing is actually universal feedback. It's not just one councillor's view of the draft. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do share some of Councillor Patterson's concerns on the reputation, particularly the way Council handled the Lakeland Queen issue. I'm sure that didn't encourage investment in Rotorua or our reputation. That aside, my first question is the Council's letter of expectation. Who wrote that, and have we been provided with that?
I thought you actually had been circulated that letter. It was prepared with the chair and the deputy chairs to go across to those CCOs, reflecting some.
Just double checking, I wondered if that actually went out under the chief executive at the time. It was under Gina's name, the letters went out.
I'd be interested in seeing a copy if that was...
We can action point that as a copy of the draft, of the LOEs to go to councillors.
That would be appreciated, thank you.
Oh, Madam Chair, it was sent out.
Yes,
to us,
yes,
yeah.
under the signature of
Yes.
the Chief Executive,
Right.
Gina Rangi, at the time. Thank you.
Right, okay, so that's the answer. Okay. Page 38 refers to fiduciary duty. Directors must act in the Rotorua NZ's best interest at all times. Fiduciary duty also applies to divided loyalties and a duty to avoid divided loyalties. In our case, as elected members, our duty is to act in the best interests of the Rotorua district. I see that quite a central part of this statement of intent involves working closely with Te Arawa in alignment with the values set out in the Te Arawa Vision 2050. I think last month, remember asking a question regarding the infrastructure. I mean, what is the status of the Te Arawa Vision 2050? Is that this council's vision? Is that
Councillor
does
Lee, I'm
council
not sure
have its
that's
own
a
vision?
question for this committee.
Well,
So is there a question around?
Yeah, well, obviously the CCO in drafting this statement of intent considers the Te Arawa Vision 2050 pretty, part of this council's vision. It appears it's an important aspect of this council's operation, is it not? I think I was told last time that the Vision 2050 hadn't actually been adopted by this council, but it seems that it is.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Relevance, it's sort of...
How can this not be relevant? It's throughout the whole document.
What's the actual question that you're...
My question is, what is the status of Te Arawa Vision 2050 in relation to our council and in relation to our council CCOs?
It's not relevant to this discussion, Councillor Lee, and I don't think that we're really in a position to answer that. We have responsibilities to our iwi partners. You'll see that in the SOI that they are to deliver on council's directions, of which that is one. We are partners with Te Arawa, so I'm not sure that your comment is relevant in these circumstances. It is just one part of the way in which they operate and one part of the requirements for them to assist business here.
My concern is that there's two different visions that seem to be operating, which raises fiduciary questions and divided loyalties. I'll just leave it there for the time being. And Rio Rua, that seems to be another policy that's rolled over from the previous council. I don't think this council's ever considered the merits of that policy, have we?
I think we have a bilingual policy here in Rotorua, so I'm not sure that there is or would be support for us to not have that here, Councillor Lee. Is that what you're suggesting in terms of your feedback? I don't think I could gauge support from other councillors, but
yeah, I might.
I think it's part of our whole DNA about Rotorua being a...
Yeah. It's not something this council's ever considered, but anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other feedback, councillors? No, on that basis then I will take it that the feedback that and the amendments that you proposed, JP, with the addition of the board attendance requirements being provided, that that go back as the draft feedback, go back as the feedback to the CCOs for them to finalise their statements of intent, which will be signed off by council at a later council meeting. Thank you. So then on that basis, we just need to, given the report that's before you, have a mover and a seconder that the committee resolves to submit comments on the draft statements of intent for Rotorua NZ and the Rotorua Regional Airport as outlined in this report. And I have a mover and a seconder. Thank you. Move Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Is there any discussion? No. Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Thank you, that is carried. Moving on to page 53. I'll just let you get to page 53. Sorry, I'll just get there myself. I have a mover and a seconder that the progress report for the Community and District Development Committee be received. Thank you. Moved Councillor Barker, seconded by Councillor Brown. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Thank you, carried. JP, back in your hands to overview the report. It's fairly comprehensive.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And probably just a couple of pieces off the tiles on the front page, the good and the bad elements in that page. Probably starting with the bad, which is still the disappointing response around dog registrations. So we've now gone through to the final letter that was issued actually in early April, not late March. So 28 days for people to pay that infringement and their dog registration combined. So that's an infringement notice for $300. After that, we're in the very difficult situation that we must then go forward to further enforcement, whether we refer it directly to the courts or to debt collection. And it's pretty important for us to keep that pressure on those who have not registered their dogs. It's really important for animal safety and welfare, as well as the safety of our wider community, that dogs are registered and we know where they are and they are looked after well. And obviously for us, the risk here is it compounds into the next financial year and the next dog registration issue. So a really important issue for us to deal with there. I'd also just like to highlight again good use of the library across the various programs. Obviously we're doing a review now on the cancelled event, Rainbow Story Time, which we'll report back next month. And probably the other highlight for me is the two pieces there, the use of the Community Safety Hub by external groups and those actually actively seeking out and understanding how we're working in partnership with the police to make sure we're starting to address things and issues within the CBD particular. And probably the most important one for me on that page is also that reliability percentage now for the parking meters that we've seen. So an improvement there to actually meet for the first time, I think, for the 6 months previous, the 95% reliability score, and also a shortening of the amount of time where machines have broken and they've been fixed. So those are the key points I'd like to raise for the committee. Happy to answer any other questions from my report.
Thank you, JP. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence. I try not to sound like a cracked record. Page 56 under Community Safety, bullet point 7, anecdotal evidence suggests begging activity has reduced. I would have to differ with that. On Monday, I did a presentation on the LTP with Rotary Club, and at the end of it, I was told of an incident that happened that morning on Monday, where 10 Australian tourists arrived on their e-bikes at a cafe to have breakfast. It had been their first night in Rotorua, and they were about to start their day, and they got physically accosted by 3 guys, intimidating them, asking them for money, not just being, may I please have some money, it's like, give us some money. Then I went to the LTP consultation here, just down the hall, with a group of school children from John Paul College and Girls High School and I think Boys High. And the concerning thing that I noted from them, and these are kids, who shouldn't be thinking about these things, they're talking about ram raids and they were talking about beggars. Now, to me, these are children. If that's permeating into their lives, then we've got a problem. And then our own research stated in the newspaper the other day that said 85% of our respondents were worried about community safety and wanted the council to focus on it. So my question to you, JP, I know I've talked about it before and so has Councillor O'Brien, is it time for us to seriously consider a bylaw of our own to ban begging?
Councillor, I think I've highlighted here previously, for people who are seeking without intimidating, it is very difficult to ban any form of begging. What we have taken, and I've reported it previously, is that we have worked closely with the police, particularly where there's a safety issue, and I mean safety on road safety, egress from businesses, or intimidating behaviour, that we have worked very closely with them to address that. So the police have been focused predominantly on the intersections, businesses that have had long-running challenges like McDonald's, and expanding that back into the city where there's been antisocial behaviour. The couple of the example you've cited, I hope someone got hold of the police immediately, because if people are intimidating or crossing that line where it suddenly becomes a police issue, and it can be enforced, that they are calling the police for action. It's your decision about whether you want to explore a bylaw. I've given you advice that they do not take a short time to do, so it's not something that would be a 3-month, it's a 6-month, 12-month process if you do a bylaw. And where we've seen bylaws attempt to put restrictions on, their effectiveness has been called into question, and they've not progressed, and Tauranga being the example I've cited previously. So again, the team are engaging and educating, and we're appropriately working closely with the police to move to the next level, which is enforcement, and so we are moving through on that space. And I think it has had an impact. Clearly then behaviour changes, and we need to modify our approach with the police again to get the changes in behaviour that are occurring as well. So this is not something that can be instantly resolved.
I think our new CE, Andrew, would like to just make a few comments on this as well. Andrew?
Thank you. I was going to say, Your Worship. Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, it's possible that two things are true at the same time. So I believe, to summarise JP's point, is that there's no way in this report are we undermining the fact that we haven't gone all the way to get to a point where we're all satisfied. At the same time, it's true that there is some evidence that begging activity has reduced. So I want to assure you, Councillor, that by no means are staff saying that we've reached the end point, and by no means are we saying that we have completed exploring all of the avenues with which to make Rotorua safe for everyone. JP's report is outlining some progress, and I'd encourage everyone to take that as a step on the journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. The other point I'd just make too is that perhaps we could circulate the Community Safety Hub phone number. This is a number that you can ring directly to the Community Safety Hub. It's a quicker way. It bypasses the customer services team downstairs. It goes straight to the Community Safety Hub, and they can actually send people out straight away if they're aware of an issue, remembering that the police are based there. You've got Māori wardens there, and we've also got our safety guardians there who can then immediately respond to an issue. So I think that would be something we could communicate out to the wider community if there are issues like that as well. Councillor Patterson?
Sounds like a great idea.
Thank you. I'll get that as an action point then for that to be circulated.
I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
So just further on in the report, page 55 talks about CCOs. I know it's not being mentioned in this report, but just looking ahead, given the announcement on Friday last week of Minister Simeon Brown releasing the Local Water Done Well plan, so we're being expected to establish a new CCO. How will that work when we already have a contract with Trilogy?
It's probably not my committee, but I'll get the CEO to perhaps answer this question.
Happy to take that question, Madam Chair. So the announcement from the Minister has not directed councils to establish CCOs, so just to be clear about that. We're working through the advice of the Minister and understanding what exactly that means, given that legislation hasn't actually landed and we don't yet have the understanding of what that means. Can I give my assurance that I will update the council, perhaps not through this committee, but probably through the Infrastructure and Environment Committee, at a time when it's clear what the course of action that are available to us are?
Thank you for clarifying that. And then finally, final question, page 67 and 68, really positive images showing the drop in motel usage compared to previous years. Just out of concern, have they all actually been physically visited by our staff to confirm that that has happened?
Councillor, yes, we do. So one of the things I've reported previously that as the uncontracted motels and contracted motels are exited by MSD or HUD as the contractor of those motels. Our staff are advised, they go in and they make a physical inspection to ensure that that transition out of tenancies or short-term accommodation for has been cleared and they're back into the tourism space. At this point, we also then, where possible, follow up on subsequent inspections at later times. So we do keep an eye on that. I do rely also on Rotorua NZ identifying if there's any changes in booking behaviours for some of those that have returned to tourism. But I think that list is sitting at about 38 that have returned exclusively back to tourism. So we do an attempt to keep monitoring them past that first transition out. Councillor, you've highlighted to me too, and I probably wanted just to make sure we did it. Also, beside those tables, was we've blown up a bigger size for the annual or the monthly dashboard, just to highlight again the changes in numbers that are occurring. So I've highlighted particularly those trends around how many people are being housed within the contracted motels, which is the HUD ones. So you can see the numbers there in the top part of that trends diagram, and then also the decrease in those that are in the uncontracted motels being used by MSD. And so probably that's the most positive trend we've seen. There's a significant drop in those. I think it's over 80% now from the uncontracted motels being used by MSD, and the numbers since I think it's February 23 to February 24 of close to 100 reduction there in the number of people in those. So I'm expectant that we will certainly see those uncontracted motels phased out over the next sort of 3 to 6 months as those numbers continue to decrease. And probably more importantly for a lot of people in our community is where did people start and end their placement in emergency housing as SNG, which is the third part of those tables. So you can see we had some new people come into emergency housing and receiving the emergency housing SNG, that grant, and a placement in February. So kind of reverses a trend we've had for probably the previous 12 months of a net decline. So that's probably something from that February table that's worth just noting.
Thank you.
And JP, I think also the maps that you provided really show the decrease in numbers of motels, because previously that had dots all over it, and now that's looking a bit more sporadic and spread out in terms of the motels that are currently in use. So we have made some very good progress in that area. Councillor Maxwell, followed by Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, JP. On the first page there, three quick questions I hope that I've got. The Community Safety Hub now being used by numerous police and community groups for regular hui. The question is, are our city guardians also utilising that area?
Absolutely, and we have daily meetings with the police just to coordinate intel and to highlight areas where potentially people have moved to who are rough sleeping, the actions being taken against those people to encourage them to move on or seek help, but also to track some of the begging behaviours across the city as well.
Excellent. Number 2, page 56, the one on the inner city. The existing roundabout at the intersection of Whakau and Tūtanakai Street is considered inefficient. I didn't think so, but then again, I'm not an engineer. But can you give me an indication of how they think they're going to make that area better?
Councillor, I don't want to try and be a bush engineer and roading engineer in that space. So we have commissioned someone to do some work at that. There's a couple of issues which have been highlighted repeatedly on that intersection. First is the behaviour around loading trucks in and out of Eat Street. It's a difficult setup in that space, which actually starts to create a safety issue for pedestrians in that area and just the traffic in general. The absolute wonder of the ice cream shop on the corner means also there is quite a safety issue on the crossing just in front of Lady Jane's there, so across to the large tree in the corner in that space. So it is a safety concern for us in the way it's laid out, and so that's part of the brief around passing that information on to an appropriate roading engineer to consider what improvements might or could be done in that space. For some of you who have been around a long time, it was originally envisaged as part of the scope for the lakefront redevelopment, but very early on in our application it was pulled out of the scope. So it was always a piece that was left with this linkage question between Eat Street and the lakefront development. So in this space we're back to where we were, which is we've had issues at that location, and we need to start looking at a potential design, and that gives us a chance then to talk to Regional Land Transport Plan, but equally into our own programs if you so choose in the future.
Thank you. And finally, this question might be to our CEO, Andrew, through you, Madam Chair. Somebody mentioned about Minister Simeon Brown, and you're going to follow through on some things from him. I'd like to ask if you could also follow through with Ms. Simeon Brown regarding the backward steps regarding getting rid of Maori wards. If you could keep us an update on what's going on there, please.
Okay, I don't think that needs a response here at this committee, Councillor Maxwell, but we'll take a note of that. So is that the last of your questions?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair, thank you, JP, for your comprehensive report. Just three very quick questions. Just on top of, sorry, I think it's page 56, you talk how our City Guardians and Hub and Patrol teams have been connecting with the truancy officers. Could I ask, off the top of your head, are you able to advise, does each school have a truancy officer, or is there a more centralised system for the Department of Education?
Now I'm testing both my board knowledge and my public sector knowledge. No, schools do not have individual truancy officers. There's a collective service that is utilised.
Thank you. Would you have any idea roughly the size of that team on their part?
No, I don't, but I can certainly bring to the next month's report.
Would be much appreciated, thank you.
I think it does go to a wider set of issues, isn't it, about behaviours?
Yep, certainly. Thank you. I'll leave that there if that's all right, Madam Chair, for that particular one. On the next one, could I ask about the Community Safety Hub? I've heard a lot of feedback from a lot of people in business, retailers in the CBD. They have no idea what it is or what it does. And I would probably urge that perhaps some of the people in that office may, during some perhaps quiet time, I appreciate it's probably never any quiet time, but quieter times, to perhaps just reach out to those, particularly along Tutanekai in that central area.
Thank you, Councillor. That's good feedback and something we should address, because it is important, like the use of the telephone number, that people know it's accessible and there is a service there ready to help them.
Thank you. And finally, could I just ask, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself, could you just remind me the consented motels, that expires, forgive me, is it December this year?
That's correct. About mid-December.
Thank you. And whose responsibility will it be if those, say, were not able to close in time? Whose responsibility is it for follow-up?
If they are not emptied when their consent expires, is that what you're asking?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Their consent is with the Rotorua Lakes Council, so we would have to go into an enforcement situation. Probably the expectation there would be for us to talk directly to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, who had contracted and supported each individual premise to get those resource consents. So if we get close to that time, we will certainly be making them aware that they're running down their time.
And thank you. If with the patience of the chair, if not today, could I just, and I appreciate, yes, we're only in April, but, you know, these things catch up on us. You do have limited resources. As we approach that December period, are you fully resourced? Are you happy that you have the resources if there are issues that we need to follow up close to December, that we can actually put this in place? Because I would like to see action taken prior to December so that when December comes around and then, you know, if further action is required in January and February, we're on top of this straight away. Thank you.
I'm going to get the CE to answer that question.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Can I take that as a direction that we will come back to this committee and answer that question fully in terms of resourcing, rather than asking JP to answer on the spot, Councillor?
Well, it doesn't worry me whoever's job it falls on, but we've known about this for quite some time, and I would hope that we have a proactive stance ready for December, not reactive 6 months later when we're still talking about this. So I just hope that that's, I think you understand the expectation of councillors as well as the public on this. Thank you.
Point well noted.
Thank you, JP.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your report, JP. I'd just like to acknowledge the fact that, and the work that your Thriving Communities team have done with the Mamaku community in the Activating Communities and Co-Designing Solutions space. That's on page 70 of our agenda. I see that there is a preparation of a report underway on the what's happening with the Mamaku community. I think I may have asked this before, but just asking it for those that may be listening to this meeting. That's a report for the community's benefit rather than coming back to council, is the first question.
Through you, Madam Chair, I might just throw this across to Thomas on the output for that. In this circumstances, the team, my team, have been working to assist Thomas and his team in managing that discussion around that hall and halls in general. So I just would like to throw that question across to him as to where the focus of that report is.
Thank you, JP. It will be both. So it will be shared with obviously those that have participated, but it will also inform ourselves with regards to our community halls going forward.
Thank you, Thomas. Any idea of the timeline for that?
The first step, I think, as I've probably communicated, is we're just working with the Mamaku Residents Association around doing a piece of work around builders' reports on the halls itself. And once they've had an opportunity to look at those reports and agree on the next steps, then we'll be able to share with that community with regards to what those next steps may look like. But I think the first point of call is to just have a discussion around the hall itself, what the builders' reports are saying, and what the opportunities are going forward.
Thank you. That'll be helpful for the community to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Wari.
Nā koe te tiamana o tira, kia koe JP, thank you. And before I get into my question, yes, me here na kia koe me tō team, you and your team, that do all this work is such a wide breadth of kaupapa you have to cover, so thank you for the hard work to you and your team. Anyway, getting into my questions, the CCTV kaupapa, 37 arrests, as I can see on your quick dashboard there. Given that we do so much mahi and the police are very lucky to have that in there, or do they make a contribution towards the costs of our CCTV network?
No, they do not.
In your opinion, should they?
I'm not sure if that's fair to ask JP to provide his opinion. I think that we all have, perhaps you could share your opinion, Councillor Waru.
I think they should.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, proceeds of crime power. Oh well. But no, I think, you know, we want to work, of course we want to work on our community safety and all that thing, but I think there's still a big part that the police still have to play in this kaupapa. And we can't just all, leave it to the ratepayer to pay for all these cameras and everything like that when they're actually there at the convenience of our police force. Not to say, not a big criticism of what they do here, they're very, very important, but I I would like to think that there should be some more tautoko our way, rather than it being a one-way street. Hoi no tera tera.
I just wondered, Councillor Waru, Your Worship, would you like to make a comment on this? Because I know that you've had some discussions with Minister Mark Mitchell around extra policing and provision of some costings and things like that. So perhaps you'd like to just make a response to that?
Happy for that. Goodbye.
Opportunity. All that I have to update on is I have had a positive perspective.
So I wonder, Your Worship, could you just speak a little bit louder or closer to your microphone? We're just having a...
I have had a brief but positive. Is that slightly better?
A little bit, maybe. We'll just see if we can get them.
I have had a brief but positive.
We're trying a microphone closer to the TV, sorry. Oh, I think we've lost.
That's okay. I have had a...
That's better.
Okay, I'll speak very loudly. I have had a positive meeting with Minister of Police Mark Mitchell. He is very understanding of the issues that we have been facing in Rotorua. Also, we have had good advocacy from MP Todd McLean. I had put a request through to the previous Minister of Police and to this Minister of Police to receive additional support or funding for our community safety hub. The Minister, Mark Mitchell, has confirmed that he will come and visit us in Rotorua as soon as possible to visit the community hub in person to get a better understanding of what we're trying to deliver. Some of the other items I discussed, of course, to help resolve this was the urgent need for additional police services here in Rotorua. So discussions are ongoing, but I am reassured that he wants to get, by him wanting to get here in person as soon as possible. So I will keep councillors up to date on when that date will be.
Thank you, Your Worship, for those comments. Councillor Waru?
Ka pai, to that end, I'd like to mihi to the Māori wardens who actually have paku te pūtea, but still managed to get out and do the kaupapa. So thank you. My last question is around the, we've got, there's two actually. One is the PC9 kaupapa. JP, so, that's been in play now for a little bit. And I know it might be a bit early to ask, but, what do you think? What are your expectations, I suppose, of what you can expect? What can we expect to see with the new rules put in through PC9? What do you think will come of that, in your opinion?
I think, Councillor, it's a good question. One of the key things that we sought through PC9 was to be more enabling. So obviously we've brought the MDRS performance standards into the district plan and made sure where there's exceptions or they don't apply that those are clear. So that's now within our district plan operatively. So we are seeing far more consents for houses moving directly because they are operating without then requiring a resource consent to go straight to a building consent, so saving cost and time for development of homes. The second piece of that is we're still waiting to see what some of the other changes are doing in terms of higher density and enabling with housing within the inner city. Again, the economic circumstances are not giving us much of a look at that potential at the moment. And the final piece is also making sure that we're finishing off our Papakainga toolkit and making sure as quickly as possible we're able to communicate that out to owners and to brief them in that space. Staff have been meeting with developers and the consultants operating in the city just to make sure they're aware of what the PC9 rules framework now looks like. And answering off any questions, which certainly for our consultants gives them the chance to help advise their clients on how best to approach consenting processes. And probably the last thing I would add is the new minister in this space has also requested a whole bunch of information that the staff have produced over the last couple of weeks around building consents issued, and so we've supplied that information to MB. So I was intending at the next committee meeting the next one of these committee meetings to bring back that information of what we had supplied, and if there's any further information nationally, how we stack up in that process. I think I have indicated to you before that last calendar year we saw an additional step up, a further 25% more homes than the previous year, so that is putting significant workload pressures on the building team now, less so on the resource consenting team, and so we just need to make sure we're managing workload and resourcing to make sure we're complying with the 20 days required or CCC sign-offs, and so yeah, ongoing challenges of success puts pressure on us operationally that we need to respond to.
Thank you, JP. I suspect that, as people become more au fait with those changes, there is going to be more pressure on your team. So keep that in mind as we move forward. Andrew. Last one is the parking. There's a few issues there, JP. How te rongoa, what's the sort of the pathway here to rectify what's happening there? Please.
Councillor, you've asked me an open-ended question, so how about I just try and take a punt at a couple of points that I think you might be interested in. I think it's that reliability question is an ongoing issue for us, and I've highlighted in this meeting previously that we're very much focused on the confidence of our community that the machines are working, and if they're not working, they're repaired promptly, so we don't have any impacts on those seeking to park, or more importantly, also the businesses in their vicinity. So a really important issue for us to address. The second part, if I extrapolate an answer for you, Councillor, is around behaviour change. So we have seen with the lifting of the fees that there has not been the corresponding uplift in revenue that we would have expected because of the behaviour changes. So you can see highlighted in a number of our bullet points, there has been a number of displaced parking locations and changes in behaviour. So one of the things you can see there signalled is us asking the contractor or provider to put on an additional parking warden, so that we can actually try and put some pressure on those who are choosing to attempt to avoid parking charges by accepting the risk of missing a ticket. So we're just trying to make sure we're looking at the kind of behaviour changes. Some of that is moving to the free areas, and some of that is taking their chances within the CBD. So we just need to look at the impacts of that as it affects the parking regime in the inner city.
Thank you, JP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waru. Last question, I think, before the morning break. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome back. There's some themes here that I just wanted to dig a little deeper on. Councillor Waru's talked about parking and the measures that are changed, but at one of the previous reports, I think it was a financial report from Thomas, the parking revenues were down despite the fact that we put parking charges up, and I think we were going to get an explanation on that but I haven't fed that back to you.
Can I just clarify, Councillor? I think parking revenue was modified by the assumptions that had gone into the annual plan last year. So I think there was something like an expectation that we would receive a further 700,000 in revenue. So we're not meeting that target. We're a long way behind that new revenue target, not the previous target, previous revenue level. So it was the uplift that we're certainly well short of achieving.
Did you want to expand on why? Take a stab at what's going on there?
Look, I think if you start seeing the changes in behaviour, a lot of our long stay parkers, so our workers have, and you can see that, who predominantly use the app. So we've seen a dramatic reduction in that, and that has been this process of people seeking to park in free parking zones. So the price point that it's moved to is now created a behaviour change where they go and find somewhere else to park that's not pay parking, or as I explained earlier, or they're taking their chances on the enforcement side. So that's the behaviour changes we've seen. Now, some of that behaviour change is actually to go into the free 60-minute zone, where there's a limit on what our enforcement or the ticket price is. And now that's a serious issue for us, because the whole point of the free parking zone was to encourage that free access, high turnover and availability to shops. So if it's starting to turn into a pseudo long stay parking area, that's a major issue for us, and that's why the trialling of the additional warden, particularly focused on Tutanekai and those free parking zones, is really important.
Sure. And when will we have a go at the parking fine amounts? Because I think it's a bit of a laugh at $12. I'd take my chances. Just volunteering that in the public.
Thank you for highlighting the behaviours. So look, I can do a bit more of a deep dive into next month's meeting if you'd like, because it also just gives you a picture of the composition of our enforcement and what kind of fines are being issued. And I think also it's important, while we're trialling this additional warden, are we seeing any impacts? So I think we need to keep a close eye on that, and your oversight is really important.
Thank you. I've got a couple more if you're okay with that. In your maps on page 67, 68, you've got accommodation provider in Rotorua Road that's not identified in either, but pretty obvious that
Recording in progress.
That it's not visitor accommodation. Can you speak to that? And also there's one in Halpapa Street that was on the previous map in 2022 is not appearing on the 2024 map, but my view of that is that it's, again, not visitor accommodation. So are there providers falling off your reporting?
Councillor, it's good you highlighted that, because it is that issue a bit, and it's the confusion we have in the community too, so you're probably having this reflected back to you as well. So if you recall, the government dashboard that we're seeing here is for the contracted and uncontracted MSD motels, where the people occupying those premises are receiving the emergency housing SNG. So it's a particular category of tenant or occupant that the government has identified. So that was part of that housing accord. What you're highlighting is the issue we've had with that wider group of accommodation providers, generally backpackers, who have provided moved away from being exclusively to tourism to providing accommodation for those who may be either short-term workers, or those receiving an accommodation supplement. So they're not receiving the emergency housing SNG, so they don't appear within the government's dashboards. I think I previously reported that we had approximately 11 of those. That number has decreased. I think it's down to 9, as 2 of them have returned exclusively to tourism, and again we go through the same inspection process, but there is those other ones, Councillor, that do sit outside of what's been presented here.
I wonder in future reports whether we start identifying those and measuring those, because I think it goes to Councillor Patterson's concerns around community safety. We're not really working in that space, and I think we need to really address the concerns that we all hear about and we want to get on top of. Councillor O'Brien has raised the issue around the consented motels in the exit plan. I would just like to signal to the new CE that I have actually raised that in previous meetings, that we want to have a plan well prior to December. And I think I was hoping to be pretty clearer that the expectation is for us to at least understand what the plan is, and then whether we need to put in some resources. So I do echo Councillor O'Brien's thinking around that. I'd make the observation that the social housing register on page 66, those numbers actually have flat despite KO's building plan. I don't know what's going on there. I'd like to understand why we're not making a dent in the social housing register. I don't expect you to answer that here and now, but I think that's a good thing to understand. One more thing on this, the CBD safety. I wonder whether we should be having a hui, because my CBD businesses have not had any really formal information flowing to them to to address the safety concerns. And this goes to, for me, it's part of our manaakitanga. Everybody in the CBD that's working there takes responsibility for our visitors, and we need to know who to call and when to call. So I think there's an opportunity for a hui for the CBD retailers to, take some ownership about who to call and when to call on that. And just one last thing, I'll make the observation that our AV is well below par.
Yes, Councillor Brown, I think I've made some comments having sat on the other end where her worship is at the moment. But obviously I know from Una's perspective she would love to have that investment, so that is something that's still a work in progress. But your comments are noted, and I think in terms of comms plan around the community safety in the CBD, it's something that Her Worship and I have raised in the past before. I know there was a circular drop, I think there's a newsletter going out, but maybe we just need to be a bit more proactive with the communications to CBD retailers about the support that can be got from the Community Safety Hub by ringing them immediately. I think, councillors, we're at 11:05. We'll take the morning adjournment now till 11:25, and then we'll reconvene and finish the rest of the report then. Thank you. So 11:25. Thanks. We're moving on to page 69 of the agenda. That is the Corporate Services, Culture, Heritage and Mahi Toi report. Can I have a move and a seconder to receive the progress report? Thank you, Councillor Waru, seconded by Councillor Maxwell. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, thank you, carried. Morning, Thomas.
Morning, Madam Chair and councillors. I don't have any presentation, so happy to take the report as read and answer any questions the members may have.
Thank you, Thomas. So, questions to Thomas? I'll let you have a few minutes just to check the agenda. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick one. Thomas, thanks for your report. It's just regarding the museum education. We used to have quite a significant number of out-of-town students come to Rotorua for this program. Has it changed at all, or is it still roughly comparable to what we had in the past?
I think the last time I spoke to the team about it, I think it was very similar, but what we might just do is in the next report just maybe highlight whether that has changed or not, but we are still getting a lot of inquiries from out of town and children from other schools from out of town coming in.
Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Page 72. Just want to comment on the stats and facts. First of all, a bouquet, then I will ask a question. The bouquet is the kapahaka where 7,000, 8,000 of us had a beautiful 2-3 days in that there. So a big hats off to the staff. If you would pass that on, I thought the staff were just tremendous. And everyone sends their love to Jolie, if you can pass that on as well. During the event, we didn't even have to advertise because we knew it'll be packed out anyway. But there were a lot of non-Māori that came and overseas visitors. The question is there a chance that we would know how many of them came, or it's just general when they go through? I spoke to many.
I think what you're asking the councillor is, do we have a record of where people were coming from? Is that I can check with the team as to whether that was captured on entry. And
be a nice thing for us to know, and that I spoke to many.
Yeah, I'll check with the team. Yep.
And the other one, for those who missed the news last week, and that the Manaakitanga was full on, we hosted Minister Paul Goldsmith there, and pleasingly, a good result came out of it from visit to the Rotorua Museum. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Thomas. Just a point of clarification at the Sir Howard Morrison Centre in April coming up, the New Zealand Māori Sports and Recreation Wānanga. Is that the one Piripi Curtis and Jim Love came to see us about over a year ago? Has that come to fruition?
I don't know, councillor. I'll have to check for you on that one. Yep.
Oh, awesome. Okay, thank you. And then just again, like my colleague over there, a bouquet to the team at the Energy Event Centre. I went down and had a look at the Māori Minecraft event. Wow, it was incredible. So it's a good outcome for our city.
Thank you, councillor. I'm sure the team will appreciate those comments. Gina just pointed out that, yes, that is the event that you were referring to, so that is the case.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Thomas. Madam Chair, the Crankworks attendees number is missing. I don't expect you to answer that, but should we expect a deep dive on Crankworks given our level of investment?
I think every year, councillor, we have an update from the Crankworks team and board back to council on the event, what went well, what didn't well, and its success. And we are expecting similar as well, bearing in mind that the event was only about a week and a half ago. They obviously haven't had the time to prepare and finalise that. So, but we are going to be having a discussion with the board around when we expect to see that in front of council.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you for your indulgence, Madam Chair. Just looking further into, I was reminded about the upcoming meetings event at the Energy Event Centre, and where I see there's maintenance, etc., being done to make sure that's looking spick and span. I think it maybe last month's Hui, we talked about some of the outlying areas of Rotorua that need a bit of a spruce up before we get all these delegates on Fenton Street, like the Golden Glow Motel maybe, and the graffiti all the way down Tenai Road as those delegates are coming in from the airport. Have we got any ideas of how we're going to tidy that up?
I think that's the pressure on our community to take pride in the things that we have. So those are a little bit outside of my control, unfortunately, Councillor. So for us, we're focusing wholly on obviously the council community assets that are in and around that. What we want to make sure is that when those delegates are coming from around New Zealand and also outside New Zealand, that we're showcasing Rotorua as best as can. And I know Andrew and his team at Rotorua NZ are working quite hard as well to ensure those aspects and experiences in Rotorua are top notch as well. So I think maybe the Chief Executive wants to add.
Yes, thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, if I may, this is a number of councillors have already used the opportunity to query my views about this matter around the beautification of the town, and it aligns perfectly well with the message that I think we are sending through the LTP, is that if the community, if the burden of keeping our city looking great falls on the organisation of council exclusively, there's a high cost to pay for that, and in the economic conditions we find ourselves in, there's a real opportunity for personal responsibility and group responsibility to step forward and take a significant role in keeping the town looking spick and span, as you say. So there is a balance. We're looking at how we can tactically use our limited resources. At the same time, we've got very clear direction around not expanding the resources of council and therefore putting additional burden on the ratepayers. So I might just end by saying that's a theme that I am hopeful that staff and councillors will take to the community through all of these LTP consultation events.
Thank you for that, Andrew. I think that comment also goes to that reputation rebuild. That's about being Rotorua proud, Rotorua residents being proud about our place, talking our place up, and also making sure that it looks as nice as possible where we can make a difference. Any further questions to Thomas on this part of the report? Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just like to echo Councillor Patterson's comments about the Digital Natives Academy yesterday in the Energy Event Centre. My goodness, they had students from all over the country, all over the North Island, getting some real serious computer skills that we couldn't have imagined kids would have 20 years ago. And they're even challenging the students ultimately to work towards software development, which is, hey, my background. So yes, what's happening down there in the Energy Event Centre, that was set up beautifully. Not really a question, just a shout out for the good guys from Digital Natives. Thank you.
Thank you to Councillor Lee. Good to hear good things happening in our community. Councillor Waru.
Tēnā koe te chairmana. Yes, I'd like to thank Councillor Lee for the tautoko he gave their kaupapa just right now around the Kura A Iwi conglomerate, which is a Kura A Iwi kaupapa. Iwi kaupapa whakakotahi ana I ngā Kura A Iwi huri no ai te motu. So it's a national-wide kaupapa, and I think as it develops, most probably we'll need the other side. You know, the big side of the Energy Event Centre soon. So something that Rotorua can really be proud of and actually own that space, because it's a huge space for our tamariki moving forward. So just like to echo my tautoko for that too. Just in saying that, Thomas, just one question. If you did a quick, I suppose, overview on an annual basis, what are some of the events? What are our big ticket events, I suppose, that keep our events for Shimpak and the event centre ticking over? What would you say?
Hard to answer because obviously they're two different ones. I think from a Performing Arts Centre perspective, we're really keen to get Janelle and the team in front of you at the next meeting to showcase what that centre has done last year and where their focus is going forward. There's obviously the drive to commercialise, but also to try and grow and develop further that arts and the performing arts sector within our community. And obviously the Performing Arts Centre is driven more with regards to coming into New Zealand around those national events that we're seeing there. And also I think many of you as well have experienced the Phantom of the Opera that was in there and really well received. So it is a little bit of a tying of what are those events, comedy shows and those sorts of elements that are coming into New Zealand and wanting to come to Rotorua. And leveraging that with balancing that community participation and growing that arts, performing arts sector. The Energy Event Centre does have some and has had some staple regulars coming back with regards to medical conferences and those sorts of aspects. And the challenge for us will be going into the meetings to showcase that facility again and what Rotorua has to offer, and has to think about how we position ourselves in a market where we have seen new facilities coming on board. You know, the Christchurch Conference Centre, the New Wellington one. I'm not sure whether the Sky City one is now up and running or not after the incident of the fire, but that's coming close as well. And these are much larger modern facilities, and for us the challenge is you're probably not going to compete on a like-for-like basis, but drawing the types of conferences and events to New Zealand, to Rotorua, that leverage the unique Rotorua experience. So when the delegates are coming here, they're not just in the Energy Event Centre, they're out experiencing our natural resources, our culture and those sorts of aspects, and that's part of that events, the meetings conference as well, which is not just about the facility but showcasing what Rotorua wider has to offer, which is why a lot of those delegates will be going off to places like Te Puia and etc. to understand what that whole offering is, and that's where we need to focus in and position ourselves. And so I guess answer your question is targeting those types of conferences in particular, but also sporting events that can go in there, where it's not just about flying in, sitting in a conference room and then flying out that day, but actually getting the delegates here for a number of days, having sessions in that event centre, but also therefore going back out and experiencing what Rotorua has to offer. And I guess from a personal experience, many years ago when I wasn't working in council and I was a manager in one of the big four, we did have the Energy Event Centre booked out as one of, I think, the first ones of when it was first built, and we all came from New Zealand, and we did have our conference in there. But on the other days, we actually spent a lot of the time going out and doing activities and experiencing what Rotorua had to offer, because that was around that relationship building and values as well. So, and I think that's where we're really well placed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thanks, Thomas. I was surprised to read in the report here that going to look at the sound system in the Sal Morrison Centre, and yet we've only just opened the place February last year.
Yeah. We live in quite a sulphurous environment, and so what we have to do is we have to take extra special care of some of our technical and electronic equipment. And normally when we buy new, we get it coated, and sometimes we don't. And so at the moment what we've noticed is that there is an element of corrosion on some of the speakers. It has been identified, so they're just being cleaned and coated with a protective coating to ensure that that corrosion is not accelerated and slowed down. So it's very common for us within this building, the Performing Arts Centre, and in particular the Energy Event Centre, but you'd also be surprised that these are the sorts of things we do at the wastewater treatment plant and for any kind of critical area. So yeah, it's just part of, unfortunately, sometimes things we have to do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And the Energy Event Centre, I know the basketball people always talking to me. The place is used a lot, and basketball is the fastest growing sport in the area. And, but they appreciate here. It ought to do as a balance with conferences and sport, and I think we do it well.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Looks like we've run out of questions. I think that concludes our meeting at this stage. So thank you, Thomas, for answering those questions. So, Councillor Lee, would you like to close the meeting with a karakia, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll close it with the priestly blessing, firstly in Hebrew, then in English. Yevarecha veyesh merecha, Yehovah paniv elecha vik chanika, Yesa Yehovah paniv elecha vayasem lecha shalom. May Yehovah bless you and keep you. May Yehovah make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May Yehovah turn his face towards you and give you peace. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I declare the meeting closed at 11:41 and remind councillors to turn their phones back on.